You arrive just as the day begins to tilt toward night. The path before you is wrapped in a light so warm, it feels as though it could be poured into a cup. The air carries the softness of a well-worn blanket, comforting yet alive with small movements. A faint stirring from the river beyond the fair. The shifting weight of the breeze between your shoulders. Your eyes notice it first, how everything has become edged with honey. This is not the pale light of morning, nor the bright, unforgiving glare of midday. It is something slower, older. A light that knows it has only a short time left to linger. The sun, now low in the sky, has to pass through more of the earth's atmosphere to reach you. In this extra distance, something beautiful happens. The shorter, bluer wavelengths of light scatter away into the dome of the sky, leaving behind the longer, richer wavelengths, reds, oranges, and golds, rayly scattering the scientists. Call it. You feel it more than you understand it at first, as if the air itself has ripened. You pause near the fair's entrance, and the world feels suspended in amber. The colors are deep and slow. They don't rush to your eyes. They drift. There, like petals falling onto water. The warmth seems to rest on your skin, seeping into the edges of your thoughts, making them rounder, gentler. A group of children runs past, their laughter tumbling over itself like marbles spilling from a jar. The dust they kick up dances in. Shafts of light, every particle glowing for a heartbeat before it vanishes into shadow. You watch them as if watching a small experiment in motion. Each swirl of dust a map of how light and air meet. Tiny particles scatter the sun's golden rays in all directions, creating halos around even the smallest movements. You begin to walk, and the boards under your feet are warm from hours of sunlight. The texture is rough in places, smooth in others, as if the wood itself remembers the weather it has endured. Heat rises from it, not in waves you can see, but in a sensation you feel when the breeze pauses, a faint reminder that the day is still letting go. Above, the clouds are thin, painted, with the palest pink and lavender. Their edges blur into the sky as though they are being brushed away by unseen hands. You realize this is another layer of scattering ice crystals high above, bending light in their own quiet way, adding cool undertones to the warm flood below. Somewhere, to your left, a vendor lights the first lantern of the night. The glow blooms softly, not fighting the sunlight, but joining it, creating a gentle overlap of two kinds of warmth, the natural gold from the sun and the small, deliberate fire made by human hands. You wonder if your eyes can tell the difference, if they can sense the change in the spectrum of light, even when the colors seem to agree. The scent of the air is different now, too. In the heat of the day, aromas lift quickly, almost too sharply. But in this hour, the cooling air slows them down, weaving them together. You breathe in dust and distant popcorn, the faint metallic tang of the river and the sweetness of grass, still holding the day's heat. It's a layered perfume created not by intention, but by time and temperature. You step into a patch of shadow cast by the tall arch of the Ferris wheel. For a moment, the air feels cooler, and you're reminded of how temperature is not just about the warmth of the sun, but the movement of molecules. In the shade, the ground doesn't radiate as much stored heat, and the air molecules slow just enough for your skin to notice. Further along, the stalls begin to hum with quiet preparation. Banners ripple overhead, catching the late light like sails made of silk. Their colors, faded from years of use, seem richer in this hour, as though the sun is coaxing out their history before it slips away. The people here are moving slower, too, as if the golden air is a gentle weight pressing them into the moment. Conversations drift, laughter lingers a beat longer. Hands pause on railings and paper cups. You think about how light shapes behavior, how certain wavelengths and intensities can nudge the body's internal clock, shifting the production of melatonin, whispering to your circadian rhythm that evening has come. A balloon vendor passes by, and you see the sunlight catch each sphere of color in a different way. Some balloons glow from within, their thin skins filtering the light into blushes and blues, while others gleam with mirrored reflections of the fair around them. In each, the laws of optics play out, refraction bending the sun's path, reflection scattering it back, absorption muting it into softer tones. You find a quiet bench near the edge of the fair, where the view opens to the fields beyond. The tall grass bends and sways under the same light, each blade casting a shadow just sharp enough to see. You think about how shadows lengthen, not only because the sun is low, but because light, when arriving at an angle, has to travel over more surface before it meets your eyes. The world becomes stretched, slowed, more deliberate. Somewhere in the distance, a voice calls out the evening's first announcements. The sound is soft here, carried and shaped by the cooling air. You listen without urgency. The day is closing, but not yet gone. This is the hour that asks nothing of you but to be present. You lean back, feeling the wooden slats beneath you, holding the last of the sun's warmth. Around you, every color, every shadow, every scent feels touched by the same hand. You are sitting inside a moment shaped by the earth's tilt, the chemistry of the air, the scattering of light across miles of atmosphere, all conspiring to create this exact shade of gold. Somewhere overhead, a bird cuts through the air, its wings flashing briefly in the light before it disappears beyond the rooftops. You follow its path until it's gone, the sky behind it deepening toward the blue that will soon invite the first stars. The air shifts again, a whisper of cooler currents sliding in, carrying with them the faint promise of evening sounds. And lights. You know the day is making its slow handover to night. And with night will come another kind of illumination, one born not from the sun, but from the hands and minds of people who learn to bend electrons into glow. The golden light is fading, but not gone. You take one last slow breath, tasting the warmth before stepping toward the place where the first lanterns have begun to speak. And as the sun's gift withdraws, you walk deeper into a world where light no longer comes from above, but blooms from within glass and wire, where the lanterns begin to speak their language. The golden wash of sunset recedes behind you, and in its place, new lights bloom. At first, they are small pinpricks of color stitched into the fabric of twilight. A single stall lamp hums to life, its warm circle of light spilling onto the wooden counter. Then another, and another, until the fair begins to sparkle like a slowly waking constellation. You step into this new language of the evening, where each bulb and lantern seems to have its own voice. Some speak in soft amber, others in pure white, and a few in colors. Rich, they feel almost edible, cherry red, lemon yellow, deep blueberry. These are the first words of the night, spoken not with breath, but with electrons. An incandescent bulb draws your eye first. It glows with the kind of warmth that feels alive, as if the light itself has a pulse. Inside the glass, a thin tungsten filament heats until it burns with a steady orange glow. This is light born of heat, thermal radiation, your mind recalls. The same principle that paints metal red when it's placed in a forge. But here, the heat is contained, harnessed into a friendly, familiar hue. You watch how this light touches the objects around it. Shadows from the stall's awning fall. Softly, edges blurred, as though the bulb is trying to make everything a little kinder. This is the signature of incandescent light, a broad spectrum of wavelengths blending together, their peaks in the warmer tones, offering not just illumination, but comfort. Just a few steps away, an LED bulb tells a different story. Its light is sharper, more precise. Inside, no filament glows. Instead, electrons jump between energy levels in a semiconductor, releasing photons directly. It's a cooler, cleaner white, like a sheet of paper under midday sun. Yet through careful design, even LEDs can mimic the softness of incandescence, mixing phosphors to shift their tone toward amber. You pause under a string of such lights, noticing how the color changes slightly from bulb to bulb. Your eyes, sensitive to even the smallest variation, translate these shifts into mood. A slightly warmer bulb feels more inviting, while a cooler one seems to sharpen the edges of what it touches. The human brain has evolved to read these signals. Warmer tones suggesting firelight and safety. Cooler tones hinting at open skies and alertness. Further along, you see paper lanterns swaying gently in the evening breeze. Their skins are thin and textured, filtering the light into a soft, diffuse glow. Here, the science is simple but beautiful. The paper scatters the light, breaking up harsh shadows and blending the wavelengths into a uniform wash. Your eyes relax in this kind of illumination. There is no glare, no demand for focus. The light here feels like it could wrap around you. You notice how each stall seems to choose its light with intention. The popcorn vendor uses warm, low light that makes the kernels gleam golden and inviting. The toy stall uses brighter, cooler LEDs to make colors pop, reds more vivid, blues more electric. Somewhere down the path, a fortune teller's tent glows with deep violet, its mystery amplified by wavelengths on the edge of human vision. As you wander, the interplay of physics and psychology becomes clear. Light is more than a tool to see by. It is a message to your senses, shaping how you feel and what you notice. The fair is a conversation in light, each source contributing its own accent, its own rhythm. You pause near a stall selling glass bottles, filled with tiny firefly-like LEDs. Their light blinks and swirls in slow patterns, mimicking the bioluminescence of real insects. Your mind drifts to the science of the firefly, a chemical reaction called bioluminescence, where luciferin molecules release photons when they oxidize, powered by a carefully timed flow of oxygen. Nature, it seems, has been speaking the language of light far longer than we have. Above you, the Ferris wheel has begun to glow. Its spokes are traced in bands of alternating color, changing in time sequences. This is another dialect entirely, one of programming and control. Small pulses of electricity run through circuits, turning individual LEDs on and off in patterns. Your brain can't help but seek meaning in the sequence, even though it is random decoration. This is part of our nature too, to search for signals. In the dark, the deeper the blue of the sky becomes, the more these lights stand out. Their reflections glisten on polished wood, on metal railings, even in the dark glass of a window. You think about how photons, once released, travel in straight lines until they meet something, scattering, bouncing, or being absorbed. Every shimmer you see is the story of a photon meeting a surface, changing direction and finding your eyes. Some lights are constant, others flicker, not enough to notice consciously, but enough for your brain to detect. Incandescents glow steadily, their filaments holding heat between pulses of electricity. LEDs, by contrast, can switch on and off thousands of times per second, so fast they appear continuous. Your visual system smooths it all into the illusion of steadiness, a reminder of how perception is both a gift and a construction. A cool breeze moves through, brushing your skin, and you notice how it changes the way the lights feel. The warmth of the bulbs is suddenly more noticeable against the cooler air, like finding a patch of sun on a cloudy day. Light itself has no temperature. You remind yourself, the sensation of warmth comes from the heat energy released by some sources. And yet, the mind binds the two together, warmth and light and comfort. You step back and take in the scene as a whole. The fair has become a glowing map of human invention. Each bulb, lantern, and string of LEDs is a point on this map, connected by paths of shadow and movement. The language they speak is not one you hear with your ears, but one you read with your eyes and feel with your body. Somewhere ahead, the notes of carousel music drift toward you, weaving themselves into the glow. You think about how light and sound often arrive together in memory, creating moments that are not just seen or heard, but lived in both senses at once. The path ahead grows brighter in places, dimmer in others, leading you toward the source of the music. Each step you take shifts the balance of light around you, changing the mood, the texture of the air. You feel yourself pulled forward, curious about how the next pocket of glow will greet you. The lanterns sway once more, casting slow-moving shadows across your path. Their shapes stretch and fold over the ground, like a script written in a language you can almost understand. You follow it without needing to translate, knowing it will lead you somewhere where another sense waits to take the lead. And as you step deeper into this glowing map, the music grows clearer, not just in your ears, but in your chest, a rhythm that begins to guide your footsteps toward its source. You follow the glow until the music finds you first. It arrives in gentle waves, rippling like warm water. At the center, a carousel turns, its melody looping with the patience of a lullaby. Your steps slow without effort. The rhythm catches your ankles and smooths your stride, as if your feet remember a dance. Sound is traveling pressure in air, tiny compressions passing from molecule to molecule. You do not see it. You feel it in the soft push on your eardrums and the way your ribs seem to answer. Low notes rest like velvet weight. High notes thread the air like fine wire. Each tone is a frequency, a count of waves per second. Your body keeps quiet tally, translating wave into feeling. Behind the ride, a generator murmurs a steady bass line. Its hum makes a floor for the music, a reference the melody leans upon. Some frequencies hide in others. A rumble masks nearby notes. Your brain sorts the mix, lifting the tune above the drone. Listening becomes a gentle act of arranging. The wooden horses rise and fall, and with each ascent, the music swells. Organ pipes push air through carved throats. Harmonics bloom soft copies, stacked above the note. Those overtones give the tune its bell-like timbre. Without them, the melody would be bones. With them, it smiles. You can almost see sound, banded and bright, circling with the ride. Voices braid through the music near laughter, a call from farther away. Your attention narrows and widens like a lens. This is the cocktail party effect, though you do not name it. A single voice grows crisp when you choose it. The auditory cortex focuses like a spotlight, dimming everything else. For a heartbeat, you hear leather creak, a latch click, a skirt whisper against paint. Wind passes, and notes smear slightly, bending toward you then away. Riders sweep by. The pitch of their laughter dips and rises the Doppler, shift in giggles. Approach nudges tones upward. Departure lets them fall like a sigh. Even without terms, your body trusts the pattern and believes the motion it sings. Hearing becomes a map laid at your feet. You step beneath the eaves where wood deepens sound. Here, reverberation holds each note a moment longer. Small reflections add up, softening edges as fog softens light. Your ears trace the room by time alone. The longer a sound lingers, the larger the space seems to be. Your cadence meets the carousel's rhythm, and a quiet entrainment begins. Biology loves a beat. Your heart slips a little toward the tempo. Your breath lengthens to fit the phrase. You are not performing, you are being kept. The body rests inside measure. Somewhere, a drummer taps the rim of a snare. Sharp transients slice the air like bright chalk marks. The attack wakes a tiny defense, the stapes tensing to protect the delicate hair cells of the cochlea. Inside that shell, bending hairs translate motion into pulses of electricity. Waves in air become rhythms of light within you. A child shakes a tin of tickets. The high clatter grabs your gaze. Short waves mark clean edges, telling you where a sound begins. Low tones round the outline and sink to bone. Together, they make a picture you trust. You walk softer, letting each sound point you onward. Near the booth, the organist's hands move like moths over keys. Patterns repeat. Themes return with soft variation. The brain loves repetition with a twist, the pleasure of predicting, the joy of being slightly wrong. Dopamine pricks, then fades, teaching in small lights. It feels like the tune is drawing new paths through a garden already yours. Memory leans in. You think of the same melody, heard years ago, near warm gust and fried dough. Odor, sound, image. The hippocampus binds them like threads braided into one ribbon. Later, tug one thread and the others rise. This is why the first note can lift a whole season to your tongue. The crowd breathes as a single gentle creature. Bodies share a meter and sway. Silence opens between phrases, and in those rests, your own breath settles. Silence is not empty. It is the room that lets shape appear. You sip that quiet like cool water. A gust sweeps the midway. The organ hiccups, then steadies. Resilience has a sound. Even machines carry it, the way a voice gathers itself after a laugh. The loop continues. You smile without trying. Someone knocks a bottle. Its ring hangs, then fades in a slow curve. Every material keeps time in its own way. Glass releases energy quickly, wood sighs it away. Damping, stiffness, density properties with heavy names behave like personalities here. You greet them like neighbors. They nod and pass from another. Stall, music arrives out of phase, a misaligned echo. Two patterns drift across each other, sometimes thickening, sometimes thinning to lace. Beats appear where waves meet constructive, destructive, a soft interference that turns the night to moving fabric. Your attention rides the denser patches as if on rafts. You float from note to note. You rest a hand on the railing and feel faint vibration in the wood. Touch is a slower ear. The body listens through skin and bone, turning surface into speaker. Low frequencies travel well through solid things. The rail keeps a memory of recent notes. A song enters you by another door. The organist pauses. The loop completes. A new cycle begins. Your thoughts circle too, but lower, calmer. The same melody is never the same twice, because you are never the same twice. You have shifted by a breath, a blink. The familiar feels freshly tender. Lights blink in time. A few bulbs pulse with the music, translating sound to shine. Your pupils follow the brightness, and in that gentle contraction and release the shadow of sleep approaches. Rhythm gathers every moving part into one slower wave. You sway, and the world sways with you. At a far stall, metal spoons strike glass. To call customers, pitches step down like a small staircase. Intervals matter. Cultures had named feelings after them. A minor drop tilts you inward. A major lift opens your chest. Even without words, you tip toward the sound. From somewhere close, oil hisses on a grill, a soft cymbal under the tune. Tiny bursts of steam pop like muted applause. Your brain pairs these quiet percussions with the promise of flavor. Expectation. Colors perception. Even before a bite, gustatory maps awaken, primed by rhythm and scent to draw sweetness nearer for you. At the edge of the music, another sense begins to speak. A drifting sweetness threads beneath the notes and finds your mouth. Your tongue brightens before tasting, a door opening from inside. Saliva gathers as the body rehearses pleasure. You let melody soften and follow scent and memory instead. You stand where sound leans into sugar, and the air seems to hum. Your steps keep time with a tune that has moved from ear to bone. In the pause between one song and the next, a light question rises. What does sweetness sound like when it finally touches the tongue? You move toward the answer, guided by music that is almost taste. At the edge of the midway, the melody thins and the air grows sweeter, and your mouth prepares to listen with the tongue. You follow the music until the air itself seems flavored. A soft pink cloud spins on a silver arm, and the breeze carries threads of sweetness like invisible ribbons. Before you even step closer, your mouth answers with a quiet flood. Saliva gathers a clear, patient river that dissolves and delivers. Taste begins long before the first bite. The body rehearses the moment it senses coming. You breathe in, and scent slips past the curtain of your throat into the high halls of the nose. There, a roof of receptors reads airborne molecules the way fingers read Braille. This is orthonasal smell, sweetness arriving as story before it becomes fact. Your mind sketches cotton and summer, carousel and laughter, and your feet keep moving. Closer now, you watch sugar turn to silk. Hot syrup threads through a fine mouth, meeting air and cooling so quickly it becomes floss glass becoming cloud. The vendor gathers it with a gentle wrist, wrapping the strands around a paper wand. Sugar is a shapeshifter, crystalline crunch, syrupy shine, powder that vanishes on the tongue knot. It collapses against your lips and disappears, leaving a bright suggestion where substance used to be. Your tongue wakes fully, old and new at once. On the tongue live small islands, papillae each home to buds of sensing cells. Some taste sweet, some salty or sour or bitter. Some sense the roundness, called umami. For sweetness, two partners meet, T1R2 and T1R3, a gate that swings when sugars knock. Glucose, fructose, sucrose, all keys with slightly different songs. When the gate opens, ions flow, and your brain receives the news as light. The message travels by cranial roads to the insula, the orbitofrontal cortex, the places where flavor becomes feeling. Dopamine lanterns flicker on in the reward pathways, not a shout but a smile. This is not just pleasure, it is history. For most of life on Earth, sweetness meant energy, meant the quick sun stored in fruit, meant survival. Your cells remember what your mind does not. Cotton candy is mostly air and memory. Each thread is a frozen waterfall of sugar, pulled so thin that heat from your mouth melts it instantly. Phase change happens right there, solid to liquid to sweet ghost. The sensation is speed disguised as softness. You taste time, fast, fleeting, bright. Another bite, and saliva's enzymes begin to work. Amylase splits long starches when it finds them. Sucrose cleaves sucrose into glucose and fructose, simple coins the body can spend. The sweetness grows rounder as molecules shrink. Swallow, and the tongue briefly misses what it told you to. Want. Wanting is part of the recipe. In the quiet machinery of your gut, doors prepare to open. The cephalic phase begins. Signals from sight, scent, and thought send word ahead. The pancreas readies a soft touch of insulin. The stomach stirs. Vagus nerve fibers carry messages like folded notes passed in class. It's coming. Be kind. By the time sugar arrives, the body has set the table. Glucose slips into blood like morning into a room. Cells greet it with glut transporters' doorways that appear when insulin knocks. Blood sugar rises a little, then eases as the meal spreads through you. You feel only a small lift, a clearer brightness to the lights, a broader kindness to the music. Energy wears a gentle face. Not all sweetness is equal. High-intensity sweeteners whisper to the tongue, but bring no calories to the feast. Your gut listens separately, sampling the truth with its own receptors. When taste and consequence disagree, The body files the memory for later. You prefer when the story and the ending rhyme. You look around and notice how the stand glows warmer than its neighbors. Warm light deepens pinks and golds, and the brain leans toward warmth when choosing food. Color is a promise. Aroma is proof. Together they steer your hand. You take another cloud and share it. A child nearby laughs asterisk. You step into the gondola and the door clicks shut with a soft, certain sound. The bench is warm from the last passenger, and the bar across your lap lowers like a calm hand. The wheel breathes a mechanical sigh. Below, a motor hums, and the ground begins to drift. At first you barely rise. The change feels like an exhale, the way a boat loosens from shore before water takes it. Then the gondola climbs, and the fare unfurls beneath you like a slow-turning map. Physics introduces itself. Not with equations, but with touch. Gravity tugs you toward Earth, steady as always. As the wheel turns, another feeling arrives. An inward holding, a cradle you cannot see. This is centripetal force, the inward pull that keeps you moving in a circle rather than sailing off in a straight line. The structure supplies it through the seat, the bar, the quiet reliability of steel at the bottom of the circle. You feel a little heavier. Your path bends upward, and the seat presses more firmly to provide the inward pull. At the top, you feel lighter, as if some part of you has learned to hover. Gravity still points downward, but the direction toward the circle's center now passes through the sky, and the required inward pull is partly supplied by gravity itself. Your body reads the diagram without seeing one. The wheel settles into its tempo. A revolution becomes a measure of time, a way of counting that belongs to motion. Bearings turn with friction so small it feels like courtesy. A film of lubricant keeps metal from remembering it is rough. You listen for the creak of structure and hear steadiness. Spokes stretch like bright lines of intent, tensioned so the rim remains round. Steel is strong not because it never yields, but because it yields in ways we can predict. Wind moves through. The gondola sways, a gentle pendulum hanging from a slower pendulum. Oscillations start, then fade as friction in joints in air steals their sharpness. Resonance, the stacking of rhythms, is avoided by design. The wheel's natural frequencies live elsewhere, away from common winds. You feel only the comfort of a system that knows how to settle as you rise past the roofline. Perspective redraws the world. Paths curve, distances confess kinship. Smoke thins to a pale brushstroke. The crowd's noise braids into one murmur. Heat lifts from asphalt in wavering threads, a sermon on convection. The boundary layer, where air meets ground, is warmer, and its upward flow carries scent and sound away. You rest a palm on the gondola's side and feel a muted tremor, torque translated into quiet vibration. Electric power arrives through slip rings and brushes, a small storm of electrons that never reaches your skin. Lights along the rim are addressed like notes on a staff, each LED receiving instruction in time. About above halfway, the horizon finds you. Distant water, darker than land, folds into sky. You are circling, and so is the planet, turning beneath you at 15 degrees per hour. Inside your head, smaller wheels respond. The semicircular canals hold fluid that lags when you turn. Tiny. Hairs feel the slip and send news of motion. Otolith's minute crystals rest on membranes that bend with acceleration, telling up from down, faster from slower. When the wheel pauses, your canals complain, then agree. Balance is a conversation your body has with itself. You look along the spoke and consider load. The wheel carries not only weight, but intention. Human choices translated into forces. Engineers imagine winds that have not yet arrived, people who might lean, bolts that may grow tired, and they add margins so that nothing becomes a story. Safety hides in numbers. The night does not need to read. Near the top, the air is cooler. Temperature drops with height because rising air expands and spends energy on that work, leaving less for warmth. The difference is small, but small is enough for skin. You draw a longer breath, and the smell of the fair is faint, like a memory you could summon if you tried. Somewhere, a generator deepens its voice. The sound arrives with a delay that measures your height. Up here, the geometry of motion writes itself in shadows. Gondolas on the near side move up, as those on the far side move down. A balanced exchange. When the operator brakes, deceleration is smooth. The curve of speed versus time is rounded. Energy takes different shapes as you turn. Potential energy grows with height, then pays itself into motion as you descend, though the speed hardly changes, because the motor and brakes keep the tail even. In another wheel, you would feel the swoop at the bottom and the float at the top more fiercely. Here, everything leans toward restfulness. The sun gives its last coins to the west, and the cabin window becomes a faint mirror. Your face floats. Over the fair, quieter than you remember being. The brain loves frames, and the window offers one big enough to hold the evening. Within it, motion becomes meaning. You are moving and also being moved. Below, a couple shares a paper basket of pastry. You can almost taste it from here, a suggestion carried by the upward breath of warm air. Anticipation recruits the same pathways as reward, and a little dopamine glows just from the thought. The wheel pauses at the summit. The gondola rocks once, then finds its center. You feel your heartbeat answer it, first a little strong, then even. Far away, a dog barks, and the delay between bark and faint echo reads the space between buildings. A first star declares itself over the river. Your pupils open a fraction more. The rods in your retina take a careful step forward as cones. Step back. Night vision is a handover negotiated gently, and the lights below, warmer now by contrast, accept their roles as anchors. Descent begins almost without beginning. The motor whispers. The brake loosens its idea of you. Air strokes your face as if the night has learned your shape. At the lower quarter, you weigh a little more again. Enough to remember you have weight at all dot when you near the platform. The operator calls a greeting that arrives before the words themselves. You recognize. The pattern first, then its meaning. Much of perception is prediction checked against reality. The bar lifts. Your knees remember the ground dot. You step down carrying a model of motion in your body. Gravity's steadiness. The trust of structures. The way circles draw time into something you can sit inside. Turning has rinsed your attention. Everything feels newly edged and mercifully blurred. The wheel continues behind you, content to count while you do something else dot as you walk away. You are aware of slopes and curves in the path your eyes once ignored. The world keeps speaking in vectors and arcs, and you find you understand a few more of its verbs. Around the corner, the evening thickens. Air slows near the ground. Warmth releases what it held all day. A faint sweetness leans toward you from a stand you cannot yet see nearby. Dot another breath, and molecules lift, freed by the night's soft chemistry. You follow the trace the way you followed the music earlier, only quieter now, like reading by the light of your own pulse. The ride's gentle physics recede, making room for something smaller and more diffuse to step forward. You catch it again, smoke, sugar, a green note from crushed stems, and realize the next chapter of the fair is written in the language of air. You let your steps fall in time with the slow currents moving between stalls, and keep walking toward the place where the evening begins to snow like itself. You step into the wider aisle where the night moves slowly, and the air feels full enough to touch. Warmth has loosened the tiny bonds that hold scent to leaf and soil, so molecules lift and wander like quiet fireflies. You breathe, and the evening writes on you. A green note from trampled grass, a ribbon of smoke from a grill. a shy sweetness from flowers nursing the last light. Heat is a soft key. When temperature rises, molecules jitter faster, their energy high enough to break free from surfaces. A bloom releases its small signatures. DAMP Earth shares petrichor's mineral whisper. Fried dough gives up vanillin and caramel's toasty edges. You cannot name them all, but your body can. Every inhalation gathers evidence, and your mind votes it into feeling. You pause near a hedge of night-blooming flowers, pale against the dark. Their petals open when daylight ends, a timing wired to pollinators who keep evening hours. Moths find them by contrast and smell, guided by long plumes of terpene and ester. What looks like stillness is a busy corridor of chemicals, drifting from source to seeker along invisible gradients. Air is not emptiness. It is a crowded ballroom. Molecules collide and part, carrying messages outward. The breeze smooths there, paths into plumes that curl, shear, and recombine. Inside your nose, the labyrinth turns the wind into story. Turbinates curved shelves of bone curl the flow and slow it, pressing scent toward a roof studded with cilia. They're olfactory receptors. Wait like patient librarians. Each one favors certain shapes. Together, they solve mixtures by pattern. A spark moves along the nerve like lanterns lighting a path. Signals reach the olfactory bulb first, mapping scent into little constellations called glomeruli. Patterns form, repeat, and refine as you keep breathing. From there, news travels quickly to places that handle emotion and memory, the amygdala, the hippocampus, older rooms in the house of the brain. This is why a smell can open a door to another year before you know what you've remembered. You lean on a post warmed all day by sun. Wood releases faint resin as it cools, a reminder that materials hold scent the way stones hold heat. The rate of release is chemistry's lullaby, diffusion pulling outward, evaporation easing bonds, adsorption and desorption trading custody with the air dot at the grill. Fat strikes a hot surface and crackles into smoke. Maillard reactions stitch sugars to amino acids, building thousands of new flavors as if sewing a quilt from light and heat. The plume is savory and brown, a warm invitation that recruits the stomach with barely a thought. Your mouth readies, your gut prepares. The cephalic phase is chemistry's prelude, tuned by scent instead of song. Not far away, citrus is sliced. A mist leaps from the peel, tiny droplets, catapulted by the rind's elastic walls. Limonene rides the air like a small sunrise, quick and bright. You feel the contrast, smoke low and lingering, citrus high and skipping. Two voices sharing the same hallway without stepping on each other's words. The river answers the heat with its own language. Water cools more slowly than land. As night falls, air above the shoreline flows back toward the fair. This land river. Breeze ferries molecules from distant reeds and whetstone, layering green and mineral over pastry and spice. You pass a patch of damp soil and crushed stems. Geosmin, earthy and nostalgic, speaks in a tone you associate with first rains and open windows. Nearby, a table of herbs releases sharper syllables. Basil's clove-like eugenol, mint's icy menthol, rosemary's pine and camphor. Phytochemistry becomes handwriting you can nearly read. Someone opens a jar of pickles, and acetic acid glances your way sour, awake, and clean. Even the old generator adds a note of warmed oil and rubber, a whiff of labor anchoring all this sweetness to the earth that runs it. You notice how expectation shapes sensation. When you anticipate cotton candy, vanilla seems nearer. When you seek smoke, sweetness steps back. Top-down signals from cortex tune the gain on incoming scent, highlighting what matters for your present story. Perception is not just reception. It is composition. The crowd contributes a human chord. Skin warmed by walking, faint soap, the musk of wool cooling. Within that, individuals are distinct, but your nose blurs them kindly at this distance. Safety often smells like many. A slight coolness pools in the low places. As air loses heat, molecules slow and fewer leap free. Scents thin. Then a warm draft rises past a griddle, and the air blooms again. You begin to feel the fair as a living lung, exhaling aromas where heat gathers, inhaling them where shade collects. Each stall becomes an alveolus in the summer's gray chest. Above you, paper lanterns spin slowly. Their heat is small, but enough to wake nearby oils from benches and ropes. You touch a knot and lift your fingers to your nose. Old hemp, salt from palms, a hint of smoke. The smallest contact writes a history. The present is always laced with fingerprints of before. You close your eyes and the map sharpens. Without, sight, spatial smell becomes clearer left, a sweet stand. Right, a grill. Ahead, crushed clover. Behind, a lemon slice. You turn as if following string. Somewhere a breeze changes its mind. The smoke that once traveled away now curls back and thins the floral plume. Plumes cross, cancel, and build the way waves do. You catch a moment of nothing, a pocket of nearly unscented air, and feel the relief of neutral, the palate-cleansing zero that lets the next note stand. A bell rings. Time moves a step. The air cools by a degree, and the perfume of evening lowers its voice. Yet even as scents retreat, they leave tracers in your mind, faint after-images that guide your feet. Chemistry has become feeling, and feeling has become direction. You keep walking, curious which memory will wake next, and which stall will open it like a book. The night's perfume thins, but its echoes stay with you, tugging you toward the stalls, where memory sets out its quiet treasures. You step into a quieter stretch of the fair, where the lights feel less like a chorus and more like individual candles. The crowd has thinned here, and the stalls open to you in soft sequence, each one holding something that tugs at a different corner of your mind. It's as if the evening has turned a key in your skull and invited all your stored summers to stand beside you. A wooden toy stall greets you first. Painted tops, carved animals, and simple puzzles sit in neat rows. The smell of varnish and pine sends you years back without asking permission. You're small again, hand wrapped around something just bought, the air thick with possibility. In your brain, a hippocampus has found a match. The shape, scent, and texture align with patterns it filed away long ago. This part of you is both librarian and storyteller, cataloging in one moment, weaving narrative in the next. A woman at the counter lifts a toy and sets it spinning. The colors blur, and you watch the hypnotic motion with the same attention you gave such things decades ago. Visual input flows from retina to cortex, traveling through the same pathways it did when you were a child, though now those roads are lined with other memories. What you see now and what you saw then overlap like two transparencies, neither completely erasing the other dot. Further along, you find a table of postcards. Some show beaches, others mountain towns. You run your fingers over their matte surfaces and feel the faint tooth of paper. Touch sends its own messages, mechanical pressure, changing the shape of receptors in your skin, which release electrical signals along nerves to your brain's somatosensory strip. There, the textures you feel merge with the stored textures. You remember. The new blends with the old until you're not quite sure which belongs to which. You pause at a stall selling handmade candies wrapped in cellophane. A piece is offered to you, and as you unwrap it, the faint crinkle of the plastic is enough to open another door. Auditory cues are powerful this way. The sound of a candy wrapper echoes in the auditory cortex, where it links almost instantly to taste memories stored nearby. A fraction of a second later, the real taste arrives, sweet, rich, slightly grainy, and confirms the brain's prediction. The reward feels bigger because you anticipated it. The hippocampus doesn't work alone. The amygdala leans in here, adding the weight of feeling to the bare facts. Memory without emotion is a skeleton. Memory with emotion is a living thing. The amygdala helps decide which stalls in your mental market stay open for years and which close overnight. Joy, nostalgia, even a small pang of longing all make an experience easier to keep. The next stall sells old-fashioned kitchenware. The gleam of enamel pots and cast iron skillets pulls forward a memory you didn't know you'd kept. The sound of a spoon scraping the bottom of a pot, the smell of bread cooling on a counter. Your brain uses sensory association as glue, binding sights to smells, sounds to touch. This binding is why you can smell bread and see the room where it baked, even if that room hasn't existed for decades. A child runs past, laughing in that open-throated way children have when they're not performing for anyone. The pitch of it makes your shoulders loosen. Laughter is socially contagious, but it also carries a chemical echo endorphins. Small opiates your body makes for itself, trickle into your blood, and smooth the edges of the moment. A single sound can alter the entire atmosphere of memory. Notice how the fair's design helps this process. Lights frame the stalls like little stages. Each is a self-contained scene, easy to isolate in the mind. The pathways are just winding enough to create moments of reveal, where a stall appears suddenly, making it more likely to lodge in your mental map. Even the sequence of scents savory, then floral, then sweet works like chapter breaks dot at a stall selling second-hand books. You pull one from the stack and let it fall open. The smell of paper, lignin breaking down into vanillin, rises immediately. This is one of scent's unique powers. Its neural route to memory is short and direct, bypassing the thalamus and heading straight for the limbic system. That's why you're suddenly in a school library you haven't thought about in 20 years. The light then the same warm gold it is now. You realize the market is not just around you. It's inside you. Each stall out here finds its twin in your mind, stocked with objects you've handled before, people you've spoken to, words you've said or heard. Neuroscientists sometimes call this pattern completion. When a partial cue a smell, a sound activates a whole stored memory, filling in details you haven't physically sensed in years. You move on, and a stall of music boxes slows your pace. Tiny gears turn, teeth pluck tuned metal, and the sound spills out like a miniature river. The cerebellum, often thought of as the seat of movement coordination, also helps predict the timing of such patterns, letting you hum along without conscious effort. Prediction feels like familiarity, and familiarity feels like safety. The vendor smiles as you linger. Perhaps they see what's happening. Your gaze slightly unfocused, your body still. You are sorting through two markets at once, the one in front of you and the one in your head. Both are crowded, but neither feels overwhelming because each stall offers only one or two treasures at a time. You take a last look around and feel the gentle ache of knowing you can't carry it all with you. Memory, like a market, requires choice. The hippocampus will store some of tonight's stalls in long-term aisles. Others will fade by morning. The deciding factors aren't always obvious. Sometimes a detail you barely noticed will survive, carried forward because it linked to something older. Your feet find the next stretch of path without thinking. The stalls grow closer together, the air more layered with scent and sound. You catch yourself wondering, if each stall in the market of your mind is a container for the past, what happens when the stalls themselves begin to shift with shadow and light? And as shadows lengthen, you see them gathering in corners, stretching across the path shapes that remind you that even memory has its darker, quieter places, waiting for the night to give them form. You step away from the warmer pools of lantern light and let the darker paths guide you. Here, the fare is softer. Shadows lean long from the posts and tents, draping across the ground like slow-moving rivers. The air feels cooler in this shade. Of night, even though the temperature has not changed much. Perception, after all, is never only about measurement. It is also about how the mind reads what it's given. You pause and let your eyes adjust. Darkness, you realize, is not an absence. It is a different kind of presence. The faintest photons still arrive from distant bulbs, from the moon somewhere beyond the awnings, from stars whose journeys began long before this fair was built. Your eyes, accustomed to the brighter paths, take a moment to shift their strategy. This is the slow handover from cones to rods, from color-rich detail to grayscale sensitivity. Cones, the cells that love light, begin to rest, their pigments bleached by earlier brightness. Rods, more sensitive to low light, but colorblind, take the lead. They live mostly in the outer edges of the retina, so you learn to glance slightly away from what you wish to see. This averted vision is not instinctive at first, but once you try it, the shapes and the shadows grow clearer. The fair reveals itself in edges, in contrast, in motion. A couple walks past, lit only by the pale glow from a food stall 30 feet away. Their outlines are softened, details blurred into suggestion. You can't see the pattern on their clothes, but you see the way they lean toward each other, the shared timing of their steps. It feels more intimate to witness only the gesture, without the distraction of every line and color. The shadow of the Ferris wheel moves across the tents, a slow-turning clock hand-marking time without numbers. You notice how its edges blur and sharpen depending on distance and the number of light sources. Multiple bulbs cast overlapping silhouettes, each shifted slightly penumbra within penumbra. It's a quiet geometry, a conversation between light and obstruction. You pass a string of paper lanterns, their light barely spilling beyond arm's reach. Just beyond their edge, the darkness feels thicker by contrast. This is simultaneous. Contrast in luminance. The brighter the light, the darker its neighbor appears. Your pupils adjust constantly, widening in dim stretches, narrowing under lanterns, each change slow enough to be felt if you pay attention. Some shadows move on their own, rippling along the path as the breeze stirs hanging banners, or darting across the ground when someone lifts a cup and light bends around it. Others are still, as if waiting for the right cue. You find yourself reading these shadows as you might read water, searching for patterns and stories in their flow. The air here smells faintly different. In dimmer light, your other senses step forward. Without the dominance of bright visuals, your brain opens the gate wider for scent and sound. The smell of cooling metal from a ride nearby, the faint sweetness of hay from a vendor's decorative bales, the peppery snap of grilled sausage all seem sharper now. Auditory cues follow. The soft thud of shoes on packed dirt, the rustle of fabric, the far-off laughter bending slightly in pitch as the Doppler effect carries it past. You step near a stall lit by a single flickering bulb. Its light oscillates, casting shadows that pulse like a slow heartbeat. The flicker is just under the threshold where it would feel intrusive, perhaps around 40 to 50 hertz. Your conscious mind doesn't register each blink, but your visual system catches them, creating a sense of movement in still objects. It's a reminder that the act of seeing is as much construction as it is reception. Beyond this, the path opens to a stretch with no stalls at all, just the backsides of tents and sunk. The dim glow from the main fair spilling through seams in the canvas. Here, the shadows are long enough to merge into one another, becoming a single dark field interrupted only by the pale lines of tent ropes catching stray light. It feels like stepping out of a story into its margin, where the world holds its breath. Your own shadow walks with you, stretching far ahead under a high lamp. It thins and thickens as you move closer or farther from its source, reminding you that a shadow is not fixed. It's a live record of geometry, angle, and intensity. At the very edge of visibility, it dissolves, not because it ends, but because the contrast has faded past your ability to detect it. Somewhere above, clouds slide across the moon. The change is subtle, but deep ambient light shifts, and shadows beneath the wheel grow softer, their edges relaxing as though they've unclenched. In this gentler light, details from earlier textures on the ground, threads in a rope, recede into one even tone. Your eyes adapt again, pulling what little light they can from the new arrangement dot in darkness. Motion is easier to see than stillness. Rod cells are more sensitive to changes in luminance over time than to fine detail. You notice the sway of a hanging sign long before you see its words, the arc of a thrown ball before the player's face. This is why the night feels alive. It's not stillness your eyes are best at here, but the subtle choreography of moving things. You find a bench half in shadow, half in a narrow stripe of warm light. Sitting down, you notice how the two worlds meet. The lit half is busy colors, edges, small reflections. The shaded half is calm, the tones closer together, less to sort. Your gaze drifts there naturally, the way your mind drifts toward quiet at the end of a long day. Somewhere nearby, a light swings on its cord, and its shifting beam makes the shadows dance across a canvas wall. The motion is exaggerated, shapes elongating and shrinking as the angle changes. This is umbra in play true darkness, edged with the gradients of penumbra, making the simplest objects seem alive. You imagine ancient storytellers using firelight. In the same way, turning shadows into theater long before words were written. The night deepens, and with it, the contrast between lit and unlit spaces. In the darker areas, your vision leans almost entirely on rods now. You've lost most of your color perception. Reds and oranges fade toward brown or gray. Blues remain faint. Greens lose their vibrancy. It is as if the fair has been painted. Over in charcoal and ink, the brushwork deliberate and slow dot, you rise and step back into motion, following the path where shadows slide alongside you. They bend and stretch without protest, never breaking, only folding themselves to fit whatever the light demands. In this, they feel like time itself, elastic, adapting, yet always attached to the thing that casts them. The sound of the crowd grows softer here, as though the shadows absorb some of it. You listen to the way footsteps muffle on dirt, the way voices thin as they move into light again. In the dimness, you become more aware of your own breathing, of this steady rhythm in your chest dot up ahead, a brighter stretch waits music floating out, colors promising to return. You walk toward it slowly, feeling the gentle pull from the glow, and noticing how the shadows fall away as if they are letting you go. And as the dark releases you back into the fair's glow, you begin to sense another rhythm, one not from the lights above, but from the people themselves, moving together like a quiet tide. You step back into the glow after the long shadowed stretch, and sound gathers around you again. Voices braid together laughter, short calls, the rumble of conversations that don't need to be understood to be felt. Feet scuff and step on. Packed ground, forming a kind of low percussion. Somewhere above it all, and music from a distant ride keeps time without insisting on itself. You find yourself moving with the current, not because you've chosen the pace, but because the pace has chosen you. The bodies around you are not touching, but each one influences the others through sight lines, gaps, and the subconscious negotiation of space. This is crowd flow, an emergent pattern where individuals respond to one another's micro-movements. Without needing to speak dot, there is a science to this shared rhythm. People tend to match step unconsciously, especially when walking in the same direction. Tiny adjustments happen in fractions of seconds. A slightly longer stride here, a half step, shorter there. Your motor cortex, without asking you first, adjusts to keep your position smooth in the flow. A group ahead pauses to look at a stall, and a gentle wave of slowing passes backward through the crowd. This ripple is more than just a mechanical effect. It is a piece of the crowd's nervous system, a signal traveling body to body, like a slow electrical impulse in a vast organism. Within moments, the flow resumes. The current restored dots somewhere deep in your chest. Your heartbeat is keeping time of its own. You are aware of it not because it has sped up, but because it feels tethered to something outside of you. Studies show that in shared spaces, especially ones filled with steady sound heart rates, can begin to align loosely among individuals. This phenomenon isn't perfect synchrony, but a gentle drift toward coherence, the way pendulums hung from the yawl. Same beam will, over time, fall into matching swings. Breath follows a similar pattern. In moments where the crowd's attention unites at a bright burst of music, a sudden shift in light year inhale happens alongside dozens of others. It's not conscious mimicry. It's the pull of shared focus. Your diaphragm, like everyone else's, moves in time with the same sensory cue, and for a few seconds, the fair breathes as one. The path narrows slightly, and people draw closer together. Here you notice the smaller signals. A subtle lean to make space, a sidestep without breaking stride, the shared arc of a body, avoiding the same obstacle. These movements happen almost entirely in peripheral vision. Your eyes are good at detecting changes in motion there better than in the center of your gaze, an evolutionary gift for navigating moving groups. A child brushes past you, holding a helium balloon. The ribbon trails and swings in rhythm with the crowd's pace, a tiny metronome that doesn't belong to any one person. It sways more when the flow stutters, steadies when the path clears. You think about how this balloon's motion is a visible record of an invisible beat. Somewhere to your right, a street performer claps a sharp rhythm. Heads turn in small unison, feet shift, and for a moment, the crowd's pulse gains a syncopated layer. You feel it in your own body. A slight lift to the step can urge to match that beat without thinking. The basal ganglia, a set of deep brain structures, loves rhythm. It responds to patterns in sound by priming your muscles to join in. Your ears begin to pick out other small consistencies. The steady shuffle of feet on the same kind of gravel, the rustle of jackets as arms swing in time, the soft chorus of breathing in cooler air. Even these quiet sounds carry information, letting you know the crowd is steady, not hurried or restless. You pass a point where the path widens, and with space, the rhythm shifts. Steps spread out, speeds vary, the unified pulse loosens. This expansion is like a rest in music and easing before the next movement begins. Some people stop to take photos, others wander toward stalls, and you drift with the ones who keep moving forward, letting the pattern reassemble at its own pace. Smell of roasting chestnuts threads through the group. You notice heads turning toward it, feet angling slightly in its direction. Smell is one of the most primal synchronizers. It doesn't just pull attention, it pulls bodies. Your own step slows without your telling it to, as though your stride were on the same string as everyone else's. Further ahead, a cluster of people gathers near a brightly lit stage where music spills into the air. The tempo is steady and mid-paced, and before long, the crowd standing nearest begins to sway not perfectly in sync, but close enough that it looks like one slow tide. This movement, once started, spreads outward in smaller echoes. Even those who are only passing by tilt their bodies slightly, their gait subtly adjusted to fit the sway. You feel your breathing deepen here, almost as if the air has thickened in the shared movement. This is social entrainment, your internal rhythms tuning gently to the rhythms around you. In this way, the fair becomes a kind of instrument, and the people are both the notes and the players. You pass through another bottleneck between two large stalls. The closeness increases again, and your awareness sharpens. You sense the people behind you without seeing them, just as you sense the people ahead. This is proprioception widened into the space of the crowd, your brain's constant calculation of where you end and the rest begins, updated every second by pressure, sight, and sound. When the path opens once more, the flow becomes looser, and you find yourself missing the quiet unity of the narrow pass. That shared pulse felt like belonging, and you realize it's still there, only spread wider now, stretched like a net between moving islands of people dot above. A Ferris wheel turns slowly, its lit cabins moving with calm certainty. Watching it, you're reminded of the earlier chapters of the Evening of Circles, rotations, and the way motion carries you without rush. The wheel moves at its own pace, and so does the crowd. Both are steady enough to hold you. Somewhere ahead, a low hum rises, the sound of many voices blending with a different texture of movement. You recognize the feeling before you see the source. The crowd is gathering around something quieter, a place where stillness has its own pull. And as you draw nearer, you sense the lights dimming and the air thickening again, not with movement now, but with the hush that comes when the fair begins to fold into the night sky. You step away from the last circle of lanterns and into the quiet that gathers at the edge of the fair. The music loosens, threads into the air, and finally thins to a suggestion. Behind you, bulbs dim one by one, like thoughtful eyelids closing. Ahead, the field rises and opens, and the sky accepts you with both hands. You let the moment broaden gently. The first star you notice is not the first that appeared. Your eyes are still finishing their slow negotiation with the dark. Rods have taken the watch, cones have eased back, and color has surrendered to tone. You pause, and with each slow breath, new points stitch themselves into a wider cloth. This is dark adaptation photopigments rebuilding, sensitivity increasing. A patient craft your body remembers even if you do not. You walk a path scuffed pale by thousands of feet, glowing faintly under starlight. That faintness is enough. Photons. Leave ancient fires and travel for years. A handful reaches your retina tonight. Distance thins light, yet the sky stays full because there is so much of it. Somewhere a vendor draws down a metal door. A metallic ripple is gentle, like a zipper on a giant coat. Sound carries farther now. Cooler air bends it close to the ground and helps it travel. You can hear the river more clearly than before, a long hush, as if it is practicing sleep with you. You look up and recognize a pattern you learned as a child. The constellation is both a figure and a story, geometry tied to memory. Your brain completes the picture from a handful of points, connecting lines that the sky does not draw. Pattern completion keeps you company, a quiet agreement between cortex and night. A faint band crosses the darkness, the Milky Way, if the air is clean enough. Its glow is the blended light of uncountable stars, too far and too numerous to separate. Between you and that river of light are thin veils of airglow, oxygen releasing photons after sunlight's work, a delicate exhale of the upper atmosphere. You can only see when everything else rests. A breeze presses the grass flat and lets it lift again. The scent of crushed stems rises once more, softer now, threaded with the minerality of cooling soil. Heat leaves the ground by radiation and conduction, slipping upward as the boundary layer thins. Your skin reads these gradients the way fingers read Braille. The fair behind you clicks and sighs, a machine resolving itself into parts. Generators idle lower, then stop. The Ferris wheel holds its stillness, like a meditation bell after the strike. A last bulb flares and gives up. Without the nearby glare, the stars sharpen, and the Peking shift becomes obvious. Reds dull, blues brighten, the night's palette reorganizing itself around rods. You sit in the cool grass and let your back find the earth. Above, satellites drift in thin, steady lines, a calm measure against the slower turn of the sky. Orbital paths are falling made circular, speed that feels like stillness. Your breathing deepens. Melatonin has been rising quietly as the light. Faded, a hormone unspooling the day from your nerves. Screens and bulbs argue with it. Night agrees. Circadian clocks in your cells consult the dark and reset their pages. You feel a loosening subtle, trustworthy like laces untied without looking. A streak draws a quick silver line across the sky. A meteor burns out in a blink, dust hitting air at tens of kilometers a second, compressed and heated into light. The trail lingers for a heartbeat, then the night mends. Fragile events can be brightest. Brightness can be brief and still complete. You hold your hand just above your face and watch it disappear and reappear when you shift your gaze a little to the side. Averted vision again. Rods crowd the periphery, so you look away to see. The trick works for wisps of the Milky Way, for the almost visible when you are almost asleep. From here, the fair seems to breathe. Where generators once shook the air, crickets take the tempo. Where sales calls and laughter braided, only small conversations remain, threads unspooled into the dark. The quiet is not empty. It is full of low amplitudes, of wavelengths that ask nothing of you. You think about the day's accumulation, light scattered and gathered, sound layered and sorted, sweetness meeting receptors, the slow wheel teaching you about circles, the chemistry of warm air writing itself into memory, the market of recollection opening stall by stall, shadows teaching you how to see less and know more, the crowd showing you how to belong. The fair is outside you, and the fair is copied within you, line by line. Your heart rate eases toward the idling speed of rest. The parasympathetic system has its hand on your shoulder now. Blood vessels in your skin open a little to release heat. Digestion hums at a pace fit for evening. The body chooses maintenance when the world grows quiet. Proteins repaired, neurons making small adjustments. The ledger balanced after the bright spending of day. A moth spirals close and away, drawn to a single bulb left lit by the path. Phototaxis, the old orientation to celestial light, misfires against our inventions. The insect mistakes a near source for the far sky and circles a logic that no longer holds. You cup a hand to redirect it, and it finds the dark again, the ground, gives back the day in small size of heat. Night breezes gather that warmth, mix it with the cool sink of low grass, and carry it across your skin. Somewhere in your brain, thermoreceptors write a small, grateful note. Comfort is not one feeling, but a balanced equation. You trace a star with your fingertip, drawing nothing the star can feel. Still, the gesture pleases the part of you that loves to measure. Distance, light year, parallax words that try to stand. In for a scale beyond standing. You think of how the universe expands, and yet remains intimate enough for a wrist to write on. Sleep begins in edges. First your shoulders soften, then your jaw remembers there is nothing to hold. Thoughts arrive with wider margins, sentences thinning to images, images to textures, textures to weight. The hippocampus, faithful recorder, starts to file the day, replaying certain patterns in miniature to make them sturdier tomorrow. Memory consolidates while you drift. You let the last of the fair's glow fade behind your eyelids. Inside, the visual cortex entertains small, harmless weather, colorless. Rain, stray fireworks with no sound, a Ferris wheel that turns without needing a motor. The glymphatic channels prepare their night shift, washing the brain's streets with the slow tide of sleep, a cleanup designed by biology and patience. High above, a constellation that once meant a hunter means only geometry now. Meaning is the story you place upon brightness. Brightness is the story the stars place upon space. Both can be true. Both can comfort you. You stand, brushing dry grass from your palms, and take a last look. The sky is larger than the fair, and the fair is large enough to hold a life's worth. of gentle science. The path back passes the gate, a dark arch that remembers every arrival and every leaving. You step beneath it and feel the night settle lightly on your shoulders. Like a shawl dot as you walk home, the world narrows to the soft cone of your steps and widens again to the cool cathedral of air. House lights appear and recede. A porch moth writes its small script around a bulb. Somewhere a dog's collar rings like a tiny bell. The universe is the size of your breathing and the size of everything at once. Sleep is not far. It waits just beyond your next doorway, where the dark is kind and the sheets remember your shape. You carry the fare with you, not as noise, but as arrangement light folded into memory, memory folded into rest. You turn the latch and listen to a silence that is not empty, a silence that knows your name. And as the door closes, the sky keeps speaking in its patient grammar of light, promising that what fades is not gone, only dimmed, waiting to be seen again when the night turns clear. And now, as our story gently fades, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for spending this moment with me. Your presence here means the world, and your support helps me create even more peaceful journeys. Just for you. If this helped you rest, please consider liking, subscribing, or simply coming back tomorrow night. Until then, stay cozy, stay kind, and may your dreams tonight be soft, serene, and full of wonder. Good night, my friend. With warmth, David.